Alright, so we've got a 2017 Ram 1500. This has got the 3.6 liter V6 engine in it. And the guy doesn't have any drivability problems, but he took it in to get it inspected. The check engine light was on. They scanned it and it had a P0303, which is a cylinder number 3 misfire. So what he wants to do is just put plugs and a number 3 coil on it, and hope that that takes care of it. And like I say, he doesn't notice a misfire. It runs fine, gets perfect gas mileage, but it's got 159,000 miles on it. The plugs have never been changed, nor the coils. So he just wants to put a number 3 coil on it, and I told him that if it doesn't fix it, then he'll at least have a spare coil, because we're going to keep the original number 3 coil. And like I say, if he still gets that P0303, he'll have a spare coil if he ever needs one in the future. He'll at least have the peace of mind knowing that it's got fresh plugs in it. And then at that point, he said that we'll start looking into anything else that could be causing this P0303 misfire. First thing we're going to have to do is get this airbox off, and it looks like all we're going to have to do, and this will be my first time doing this, so I just slung that across the engine bay. This will be a good gauge for someone that has never done their own, how long it's going to take. Now, you need to be aware the intake's got to come off for the driver's side coils and plugs. You can see the coils and plugs on this side. Going to be very easy to get to once we get this airbox out of the way. Now the driver's side, not so much. You can't see anything. The intake, comes up and overlaps the valve cover on this side. But it doesn't look like it's going to be that big of a deal to remove that upper intake to get to the coils on this side. Now to get the airbox off, I've already unclipped the air filter upper box, and it looks like there's just an 8mm worm clamp there. We got a connector here, and I think that might be it. Let me get an 8mm. We're going to loosen the clamp off, and then I'm going to see if this whole thing will slide off. Actually, it looks like it might have. Okay, no, it just slides into that. So, yeah, let me get this thing off and we'll get started. Alright, it's got one of these hoses. And let me show you how that's done. So it's got this hose, this PCV hose. If you push up on this little, you push up right here, it will spread the ears apart. I don't know if you can see how I'm pushing up and it's spreading the ears apart. Anyway, push up on it, it'll spread those ears apart. The plan is I'm going to go ahead and replace these 3, and then we're going to go ahead and remove this intake. Now, I think those 2 studs back in the back, I think they should have had nuts on them, but I don't see nuts. Like this one. This one here's got the front one, which is just a bracket to support the intake. There's looks like 10mm nuts. Someone's already had those back ones off, it looks like. But other than just disconnecting some hoses, unclipping a couple things, it looks like there's about 7 bolts that we'll take out, and then this whole intake should pop off there. disconnect a couple connectors down here for the throttle body. But first let me go after these coils over here, get those done, and then we're going to do the intake. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is take these bolts out. And a lot of times, depending on how much slack you have in your wire here, you may not even have to disconnect the connector. So I always take a look at that first before I start disconnecting the connector. Now this one's got a little Christmas tree right here. Let me see if I can pop it up. It's coming. Yep. So you don't even have to disconnect the connectors. This one's got the little Christmas tree that I just popped out of there. The others came right out. So let me get a spark plug socket and we'll get these plugs out of there. It's always a good idea to blow these out before you take the coils out, or before you take the spark plugs out. I typically 5/8 or a 16mm spark plug socket is what this thing takes. And yeah, let me, now I think this is cylinder number 3. I'm going to have to double check before I put that coil in, but I think this is number 3. And let me see if I can show you. This is the first plug that we've taken out. And that's definitely a plug that's got 159,000 miles on it. Hopefully that come through. Let's take a look at this number 3. Yeah, it looks about the same. Just to give you an idea of what a new one looks like. This one looks about the same as the other two. Always take a look at your new plugs, even if they're fresh out of the box, and just double check to make sure they're not damaged. Now this one I believe is number 3, so I'm gonna, before I put that one back in, I'm going to check on that, because we're going to replace that one. So let me go double check. I'm pretty sure that's number 3, but let me check before I commit to it. Okay guys, this is cylinder number 3. So I'm going to disconnect this connector. There's a little red tab you got to pull out on before it allows you to push the locking tab in. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of drop this down in there. And there you have it. So this bank is done. Now it's all about getting this intake out of the way. So these lines that snap into these little retainers, I've unsnapped them. This here slides down over that. I just pulled it up over that. And these 2 lines, this one and this one, I just pulled out of the way from here. And I think other than these 2 10 millimeter bolts for this bracket for the connector, I think we're pretty much set. Like I say, I think there's supposed to be a couple nuts back here. If yours has those, you're going to need to take those off, just like these 2 up front here. These 2 right here. I'm going to go ahead and disconnect these connectors here. Got some Christmas trees that we're going to undo. Looks like this connector here. What is that? Map sensor probably. I'll disconnect that. And then it's just a matter of taking these 8 millimeter intake mount bolts out, and this intake should pop right off here. Don't take these out. This is for the lower intake. That's bolting the lower intake to the engine. We're taking just the upper intake off, which is going to be this bolt, and then your bolts going back that way. So let me get the camera set up so that you can kind of see what I'm doing. Alright guys, so these 2 10 millimeters to get that bracket off, and that frees up everything on this side of the intake. And I'm dropping stuff down in here, so I've got to dig, what was that, a socket? Yeah. And I think the camera might have been off, but all I've done is I disconnected these Christmas trees right here, took these 2 10 millimeter nuts off. This hose here goes on right there. This connector, here's the little wiring harness out of the way that went to this connector, and then there was one that came over here to the throttle body. And I've just started taking these intake bolts out. That's whenever I got to that connector with the 2 10 millimeters. I still got to take the rear intake bolts out, and I don't know if the camera for sure was on when I was talking about those 2 back nuts. If yours, I think they should have nuts on them. This one did not. So you'll have to take those nuts off, just like these 2 nuts right here. Anyways, let me dig this socket out from the bowels of this airplane, or this truck. and we'll press on. Alright guys. Get a shallow for that. Okay, how many we got there? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, looks like there's one more way back in there. In fact, I'm going to probably need to reposition the camera a little bit. Alright, that should have done it. I think what we got is these long bolts are still falling down into manifold. And there it is, fellers. Get rid of that. Now you've got total access to the coils. Now it looks like you got a couple options here. If you want to get straight down on this bolt, you could unbolt this bracket from down below. I'm not going to bother with that if I can help it. And it's always good practice to go ahead and put paper towels or something down in your intake ports. That way you don't drop nuts and bolts or debris down in there. I Always a good idea to blow these out before you take your spark plugs out. And like I say, always look at your new spark plugs. Make sure that they are not damaged. Make sure that they haven't been dropped and the side electrode is smashed down to the center electrode. It's a good idea to actually check the gap too. These, I just eyeballed them. They look like they're pretty close to the 40 thousandths that. And there you go. All spark plugs are replaced. Got a new number 3 coil. And now it's just a matter of putting it back together. Alright guys, so we're getting ready to go back together with the intake. Don't forget to put your insulator on, which is this piece right here. And a tip, before you put this intake up on the engine, these bolts are captured, but if you pull them up and just give them a quick little turn, that will hold them up out of the way. I don't think we're going to be able to do this backwind because it's too far up underneath the cowl, but all these should stay up and out of our way. So we can easily get the intake in there. And basically, once I get the intake in there, I'm going to have to kind of shove it in this way for it to be able to go into the holes here where these two studs and these two studs are. And I'm going to show that. And the gaskets, the parts house didn't have gaskets for this. So I ended up cleaning the original gaskets up. I checked them to make sure that they're standing proud of the mating surface, and they are. They're still nice and pliable. They're raised higher than the mating surface, so they will compress, and they shouldn't have a problem sealing the intake. But I'd recommend getting new ones. If you're going to do this, just go ahead and get new gaskets to be on the safe side. So now let's see about getting this intake in here. Like I say, this is the only one that might kind of mess with us because it's obviously hanging down. Rear bolts are in, or rear studs. Front studs are in. And there we go. And basically you're going to want to torque this from the inside going outboard, kind of in a circle. And I like to just go around and make sure that they feel about right. I'll put the torques up on the screen if I can find them. This little deal's just got these little 10 millimeters right here. I did not see where this was connected. I don't see any place for it to connect. I'm gonna have to look into that. Other than this, that's everything on this side. Just putting these two 10 millimeter nuts on over here. I think we got it, guys. Other than getting the plenum back on, that's it. Alright guys, so this line right here is the transfer case vent or transmission vent. It vents both. You can tell that it has not been hooked up. That kind of threw me there whenever I was going back together with this. I was trying to figure out where that went, but it didn't go anywhere. I didn't remember disconnecting it. So let me get this upper plenum on and we'll start it up and see how she runs. And we'll check and see if it's still misfiring on cylinder number 3. So you're supposed to have little rubber grommets like this one. This one's torn. This one doesn't have the grommet at all. And that's what goes in these little holes right here. So this one does not have those. Don't forget your temp sensor connector, your clamp, and your hose. Right there, it just snaps on. And this puppy's ready to start up. Okay guys, we just finished the spark plug change and number 3 coil change on this Dodge Ram. And I just want to take a look at the misfire monitors and see if there's any misfiring going on. And I'm sorry, this truck's got 149,000, not 159. And I'm just using the launch CRP 919 here. And let's see, let me just select powertrain. And let me see if this Dodge has the menu that I'm hoping it has. Yeah, OBD2 monitors includes misfire. That's a very handy thing that these launch scan tools have. And I'm going to go all the way to the bottom. I think it's almost all the way to the bottom. It's not completely all the way to the bottom. I take that back, it is all the way to the bottom. Right there where it says which cylinder is misfiring, that's what I want to look at. And basically what you'll see over here under value where it shows 0 right now, if any cylinder is misfiring, that will start counting the misfires. Now this was cylinder 3. I'm going to go ahead and pull the graph up, and I'm just going to rev it up, and we'll put it in gear here in a minute, and we'll see if we can see any misfiring going on cylinder 3. The truck seems to be running great. It's smooth. I'm going to go ahead and put my foot on the brake. We'll put it in drive. Kind of give it a little bit of gas. We're at about 1500 RPM with it in drive under a load. 0 misfires. So that's looking pretty good. I'm pretty confident that that's probably going to take care of his issue. Because if you go over here to, let's go ahead and get rid of that graph. I guess I'll just go back. Let's make sure that none of them, I'm not seeing any misfiring going on at all. Let me go over here. Function is what I'm possibly wanting. Add OK to that. Yeah. Mode 6 right here. So misfire cylinder number 3. If you look right there, test value 44. Now this was misfire counts for the last 10 driving cycles. And that's showing 44. It's saying that that's a pass, but that is what this vehicle's in here for. If you go to, let's hit next, see what that gives us. That's showing 0. Had 0 on the last driving cycle. I can't get it to misfire right now, so you know, he needed plugs anyway. It's got 150,000 miles, so he wanted spark plugs and he wanted that number 3 coil changed. If it still has a misfire on 3, that will rule out the plugs and that number 3 coil. He has a spare coil now that he can hang on to. If this fixes it, he may want to chunk that coil in the trash. But you saw what the plugs looked like. They were pretty eroded away, so at least he's got some decent plugs going on now. Anyway, that's it. This was a 2017 Dodge Ram, or Ram 1500. It's got the little 3.6 V6 in it, 6-cylinder. We're done. You guys take care.